Spawn On Me is the premier podcast spotlighting people of color. Every week, we talk news, what we've been playing, and tell you who's invited to the cookout. Our show is all about talking about gaming through a prism of blackness because we are the culture. Welcome to Brookago, y'all.
Hey everybody in Brookago, what's good? This is Kahlief. We have a really cool mini episode for you all. One of the things that I've been playing a bunch of has been Wild Rift. And if you have not been up on Wild Rift, you are missing out on some super fun stuff. So we snagged some folks from Riot to come and give me the ropes, teach me the ways of how to be a non-scrub when I play LoL. So introduce yourself to the folks at home and let them know what you do on the team.
Hi folks, my name is David. I am currently the champion producer on Wild Rift. So in terms of looking at which champions we're making, how we're making them, why we're making the champions we're making, that is my day to day.
Yeah, so I'm super excited because, you know, as a person who's been learning, you know, League and learning how to play and trying to get better and trying to figure out ways to learn, Wild Rift has been a really great way to kind of like jump in for the first time and try to figure out, you know, not only how champions work, but me as a person, when my first MOBA was a game like Paragon, moving over to traditional MOBA like this is so cool. And one of the things I've loved about what you've all done, and I'm going to switch over to our game screen, is just how smart you've all done the process of, you know, leveling people up into the game and teaching them how to get into, you know, MOBAs as an overall kind of genre and overall kind of game. Like the tutorial in Wild Rift is one of the best tutorials around MOBAs I've seen in a very long time. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about, you know, how you're thinking about all of that while I try to pick my person and stuff. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that because I think that stuff is brilliant and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a couple of parts to that. The first part is we absolutely see Wild Rift as a great entryway for folks who get into the League ecosystem, right? Right now, there is a lot of work done on fleshing out the entire League universe and the League IP, and we just want to be where the players are. Right, so whether you're playing on PC, you're playing on whatever other platforms, being part of this universe, we think is tremendously valuable. And so Wild Rift, for a lot of the players who prefer to play on mobile side, this is a great entryway for that. Yeah. And the other part we're really trying to be cognizant of is we do think skills, especially like the macro level understanding of, hey, what strategies should I be applying? How do I think about mobile gameplay in general? A lot of that should carry over whether you are on the PC side of the game or side of WoW.
Yeah, it's super cool to figure out and see, you know, just what that looks like from a, you know, kind of newbie perspective, right? Of trying to figure out what's the way to balance out that gameplay and what should I be pressing because I'm holding us up.
So I can press start now.
Okay.
If you know the character you wanna get started with.
Yeah, I can snag somebody.
All right, here we go.
Nice. Yeah, so I love the fact that, you know, you've all built that into the game and have thought about ways to continue to build out smart systems for players, right? You've tried to bring in ways for people to be able to learn and to also be, you know, use this as kind of a training app to a certain extent for people who want to get into the larger game on PC. How are you kind of thinking about the process of, you know, using a game in this way from a touch controls perspective in a way where, you know, when you go up and move up into the next layer of League, it becomes a lot more, you know, technical, it becomes a lot more, you know, knowing comps and knowing, you know, how to figure out how to tackle your particular lane. You know, when you have a game like this, how does the character translation feel for the team? Did you feel like, you know, you had to do certain things that made the, you know, the powers and things kind of feel a little bit better on mobile?
For sure. I think definitely controls was in our many years of development for Wild Rift, controls was for sure one of our biggest hurdles.
Yeah.
Right. And this exists on a spectrum too, right? So for some abilities, let's say, hey, this ability is just like a line shot in a direction, for example, right? These type of abilities translate pretty easily. right? You just gotta pick a direction, you aim and fire.
Yeah.
But for other abilities, especially when you're on PC, when you have the precision of a mouse,
Yeah.
And you're able to very rapidly select things. Let's say Misfortune's for Q ability, for example.
Yep.
That's on PC, that makes a lot of sense. Be very precise with that. But doing that on mobile is a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
Right, being able to very rapidly select very small units, right, on your screen is pretty challenging.
Right.
And for that is like just one of the first things that we found. Oh wow, this is hard. How are we going to make this make sense for players?
Yeah.
And so you see some situations where hey, we just made it. We turn it into skill shots, right? We add accessibility so players can still play the game and still have the same a lot of the same skill tests, but have it just be more accessible for them.
I love that. I mean, it is one of the things that is a really difficult thing to figure out, which is, how do you balance the, playability of a game like this that, again, is pretty technical for a lot of folks who don't understand and who are not big MOBA fans. Like, MOBAs to a certain extent are not easy. They're not easy to learn. You have to kind of get into the space and understand, lots of different intricacies of, how do you play your lane? How do you learn how to balance out your skills versus the other people that you have in your team? And then also building really interesting team comps that feel like you're both playing towards the meta of the space, but also making sure you're playing in a way that feels like you're understanding what those moves wind up doing. So I'm playing with Lux right now, who has a couple of different particular powers that are really beneficial to, crowd control and things like that. When you're thinking about building characters in the main game and then, what gets shown here, what's the conversation from the team standpoint about, balance, which is always going to be a thing that's hard to kind of figure out. And then also kind of seeing the way the meta usually is kind of evolved over its time. What's the conversations that you're always having about like balance, especially for now a game like this, where you have a lot less real estate depending upon the size of your phone, or, again, because there are touch controls in here, certain things that are usually auto attacks or some of those things that are line of sight attacks, they wind up changing. How does the conversation around changing the meta for a game in this format sound to the team?
Yeah, super cool question. So on Wild Rift, we have a team so my team is dedicated to making the champions.
Yeah.
Right. And we have a separate team that's much more dedicated to the live balance of the champions. So they're just a lot more in tune. Hey, like what is strong? What our players are playing? What is frustrating for players to play against right now?
Yeah.
And so they're much more in tune with that. On the champion creation side, what we always try to do is we got to make sure there are levers, and that's the part that's really important to us. The initial how strong or how weak a champion is, that part actually isn't the hard part to figure out. It's the part that under what situations does this champion become overtuned, and do you have the right levers to then tweak to keep this champion back in line? As long as when we're making the champion, these levers are in place, then we actually feel very confident that once we have it in our balance team's hands, they're able to then figure out, hey, where on this gradient scale, right, should whether it's your stats or your mechanism, where they should be, right? And so it's very much keeping in mind, hey, like, is there counterplay? Counterplay is a huge deal when we're making champions. If there is no counterplay, actually the other I guess metric that we are always really cognizant of is player frustration.
Yeah.
Right? And this is both on the player who's playing the champion, but also playing against the champion. That is equally important to us, and we want to make sure there's enough levers to balance against both of that.
Yeah. Shout out to the Weather Channel for giving me a notification during our play. It's always one of those things where, I'm, again, as a person who's been learning a lot about the MOBA space and about how games like this play, as a person who is super competitive in a lot of different ways. I've always found it to be super interesting about, like, how does a new character get made? How do you evolve a character that's already been in the space for a while? Do you feel like at this point, the team is looking at ways to constantly try to bring new champions to the fold, while also kind of, making sure that everyone who has already been in the space has the characters that they kind of already known and love? Do you feel like there's a lot of call from the audience to say, we need more. We need new all the time.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that goes back into like how we even selected the champions we decided to make and bring over to Wild Rift.
Yeah.
Right. And I think along those lines, there's a couple of things we really try to look at. The first is I think popularity absolutely has a factor in it. I'll be lying if I said I think that's a more of a reflection of, hey, what is the authentic League of Legends experience, right?
Yeah.
And to us, like, hey, like if you have had a League game without like Yasuo or without a Zed, some of these like just really iconic League characters,
Yeah.
then I think we would be missing the mark and not be doing players the justice, right, of having their favorite characters in the game. So that is a big element. And the second element is finding characters that we think naturally as part of their kits fit better on mobile space. So some of my favorite examples here are like Aurelion Sol, for example.
Yeah.
Aurelion Sol, there was actually some magic that we had when we were playtesting a character. Like, wow, like, because on PC, not only do you have to control your movement direction, but also be cognizant of your relative position to the characters, and also like kind of positioning using your abilities. There's a lot of APM going on, right, with controlling a complex character such as the Space Dragon.
Yeah.
But on mobile side, because you use one button, your left joystick, to control your movement.
Yeah.
Right. The position of your stars becomes a lot easier for you to handle and know where you are. And so, whereas for playtest, like, wow, like, this character, which was a really challenging character on PC side, it is still challenging on Wild Rift, but challenging for the right reasons. Right now, it's all about your positioning, knowing where you should be, rather than fighting with the controls. Right. So stuff like that is also a big thing we try to look at. Hey, like, does the Champions kit already naturally fit better onto mobile? And we should really try to bring those characters in.
Yeah, and I'm happy to hear you say that, because one of the things that I've found most interesting and hard so far from a kind of traditional learner of the MOBA space to what I've been trying to learn here with Wild Rift it is movement. Like the way the camera has moved kind of independently of where I'm moving, as a person who's not super mouse and keyboard heavy as a player for most of my games. I'm learning, how that stuff works in Wild Rift in that way too, which has been super cool. When you think about the way that the game is translated so far, and at least from what I'm seeing, everything feels like it belongs where it's supposed to, which I think from not only a UI perspective, but from a, oh, you got caught, buddy. Yeah. Get up.
Nice catch there.
Yeah, got him. Let's go. Is one of those things of trying to figure out, again, like from a UI perspective, how are you kind of keeping things in line? From a champion perspective, where you're thinking about, matchups and team comps and things like that, what have been some of the things that you found as, things that surprised you so far while building out this game in this way for mobile?
So I think the first thing is just how good some of our players are.
Yeah.
And when we first got into development of the game, we admittedly, I think, came initially from mindset of, hey, like, there's some UI elements that are going to be really challenging for players. So an example would be in terms of a lot of our competitors within this space, they only have 3 abilities.
Right.
And we were really worried, hey, like, if we had 4 abilities, our players only going to be able to handle that? Like, that's going to be too much clutter. Is that going to impact the accuracy of how they're able to aim skill shots and that this kind of consideration?
Yeah.
And so we were testing multiple versions of a build initially, right? We had a version of the game where there's only three abilities.
Yeah.
Right. But the version you see here on live now is with 4 abilities. And one of this came from some of the early testing we were doing is, wow, some of the magic that the players have, like what they're able to do with their fingers, totally blew away our expectations, and we very quickly kind of quenched our worry that players couldn't handle this. Like, no, if anything, players can absolutely handle this, and this is actually a part of the skill development. Players feel like, hey, this is more challenging, more tactical. They have more things to play with, and that contributes to how much they're enjoying the game.
I love that, because it's there are so many games that get made where they try to shoehorn what the things may kind of work in the main game into a mobile version of it that doesn't necessarily feel like it translates as well as it possibly should. And one of the things that I found really interesting and cool has been just how, I'm doing like we're playing a game now, and we're playing some bots to kind of show off the game. But I think even in the time where I'm kind of learning and pushing through, and I'm about to get mixed because I just ran in there like an idiot. But I don't feel like I'm at a disadvantage. You know what I mean? Like I feel like even in the moment where I'm playing. Oh, I just got run through. No. Oh, I just lost. Where I don't feel like I'm at a disadvantage. I don't feel like I'm, moving in a direction that I don't want to move. It doesn't feel like the things that I find as potential pain points sometimes in the main game I'm having here because of the way that it winds up working. And I love the way that you've all have thought about how you dole out characters as well, in terms of earning characters and earning champions and pulling champions in to the main game. I'd love to hear your thoughts about, how you all decided to do that in that way too.
So is this go back like which champions we end up picking to bring from the PC to so I think again going back, I think popularity, just how resonant is this champion generally. That is a big deal. The other part is something that we're always cognizant of is so something we found very interesting for players is for the players who really ends up loving League of Legends, the kind of I categorize them into three different types of players, right? This is super generalized, but the three category of players would be, hey, these are some players play the game because they like the expression of skill, right? They want to climb the ladder, get extremely competitive, right? This is one type of player. There's another type of player who play the game for the aesthetics, for the story behind these characters, right? For the lore. And there's another category of players who I consider probably a bigger percentage of our player base are these players who really enjoy these skill tests that are given to them, right? These little puzzles that they get to solve while playing the game. And so for these players, what we found is like it's really important to make sure that I call like a jobs to be done, if you will. Like, hey, like me on this team, how am I contributing to my team winning the game, right? And so some players really love the tank initiator role, right? I really like I might not have a great time playing people one-on-one, but at the snap of a finger, at a drop of a dime, in this moment, I just win the game for our team, right? Some people really like that. And there are some players who like the supportive elements, right? Like they prefer to enable other people, power up other people, and help the team win that way. And for these players, this is something that we want to make sure there's a variety of play styles. Right? They always can find something that helps them do the job that they want to contribute to their team. So that is absolutely another thing. So in our we're like which champions we're launching, for example, the roadmap, we're always very cognizant. Hey, like. This year, for example, are we giving the assassin players enough assassins for them to sink their teeth on and find new puzzles to play, right? For the players who love these tanky initiators, are we giving them enough of that to try and experience?
Yeah, because I'm a person who I love CC. Like I love being the person who snagged people so that my jungler can come in and my ADC come in and scoop up kills, right? So like. Me being a person who's learning how to, do that in a game like this, it feels like, I'm learning tactics and things like that on the fly that make me a better player in the game, in the main game in that way. I guess the other question I would have for you is from the team's perspective of like, yes, this is a very separate product in the way that it is, but do they feel like, on its own in comparison to the kind of main bigger game, that the community is really finding a home here as well? Because I know that's hard to be able to, when you have a main game, people are really just like, I don't want any new stuff, like I don't want new things in the space right now. Like I want you to fix the main thing that I'm playing and make sure that's the best that it can be. But all the other new stuff you're trying to do, I don't want that. But it feels like, from conversations I've had with people who are, again, like either new MOBA players or folks who are just kind of getting into space who have been, MOBA curious is the way I like to call it. Like that has been super cool to see, people be really excited about that stuff. Is the team like really, when they're thinking about this as a separate product, as like, we want to continue to build this out in a way that, our parts of our player base will move in and out of it, to kind of get their lull fix?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think there's a couple parts to that. The first part is, as I mentioned in the beginning, we do see Wild Rift as a great entryway into the entire League ecosystem because
Yeah.
it is extremely rich, right? Like all these backstories we have for these characters, we're constantly updating them, we're really building out the universe, and sometimes getting into the larger PC game, right? There's 158 plus champions,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of information you're going to have to learn, and that could be daunting to some players. And so if to have a more relaxed, but still having a lot of these kind of tactical elements to learn about and learn about like just the basics of MOBA awareness, right?
Yeah.
As when before the MOBA curious, right? We absolutely see this as a great way to go about it. But even
Nice.
in addition to that, something that I think just personally as a heavy PC player myself
Yeah.
and kind of being development of this game, there we call this like kind of like skill attrition, if you will, or on PC, where if I didn't play PC for say 2 weeks, even
Yeah.
getting back to it takes time. Like, I had
Yeah.
to play probably quite a few like normal games, a couple of ARAMs for me to get my skill back to where I want to be before I jump back into ranked games,
Yeah.
right? We hope that something like Wild Rift is there is still going to be that, but much less of that, right? So whether it is you're treating Wild Rift as your primary game or as a companion, right? We see that as both very viable ways for you to be engaged in the League ecosystem.
I love that. Yeah, because as a person, you want to run one more as we're kind of
Yeah,
finishing
do
up.
it.
Yeah, I love that as a part of the conversation, right? Because I think again, for me as a person who is learning more about the space and trying to get better and learning how to, um, you know, both learn the intricacies of how to play your lane correctly or how to figure out your ways in team comps of how to be the best player you can for your team. Wild Rift has been really amazing at being able to hold my hand through that in that way too. Are you thinking about doing even more character tutorials as well? Because one of the things I've loved has been something that's like, initially when you go in the game, it's like, here's how you play, here's what lanes do what, here's what characters go into those lanes. But one of the things I've always loved and wanted to see in any MOBA space has been the like situational tutorial stuff. That's like, in this moment, as this character, your setup should be, you throw your snag out, you throw that out first, you follow up with your other power, hoping that other people come in. Are you all thinking about those things too, in terms of like those situational tutorials things for all the characters that you have in the game?
So before I answer that, Kahlief,
Yes.
you might have to get off that party for me to invite you again
Oh, okay.
for our next game.
Let me go to the home and then do it again. Okay,
Here we
got it.
go.
Got it. Perfect. Look
Perfect.
at that.
So just come to the left and now I'll add the.
Got it. I'm in there. Oh, they put us on
Cool.
opposite
So
teams. Ha 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 ha.
yeah, so you guys click on the left side.
Oh.
Yeah, so you'll be
I
on
see.
this.
I got it.
There we
Perfect.
go.
Got it.
All right. Okay.
Nice.
So I'll start the game and I'll talk through some of that.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you mentioned that you really enjoyed our onboarding, our tutorials.
Yeah.
I love hearing about that. I'm sure of our new player engagement and our onboarding team is going to be really ecstatic to hear this kind of feedback. But we are actually very cognizant that there is a tremendous amount of room we can get better in that regards. Right. And an example that's always in my head and has actually been pretty front and center for me over the last couple of weeks is, hey, if we treat it, and we a lot of us in Riot see this way as like, League is a sport, it's an e-sport,
Yeah.
right? And if we compare that to other sports, right? Let's say like basketball or soccer or golf or what have you, right? A lot of times when you're learning these sports, it isn't about, hey, I'm just gonna throw you in and go play with 9 other experienced players and try to score some buckets, right? It's not about that. A lot is, hey, you got to learn how to dribble, you got to learn how to shoot, you got to learn how to pass, and then now, hey, you go in, right? And you can string these skill sets together and be really proficient at the game. And so, absolutely, in this space, helping new players learn is absolutely something that's going to be very important for us going forward. Where that's coming on our roadmap, that is something we're actively working through, but you can bet it is front and center for us to make sure that new players are set up for success coming into the game.
I love that. I mean, again, it's I was telling some friends who I know who work at Riot, and they were like, what do you think about Rift? And I was like, I love it because it feels like it is doing the thing that most games don't do, which is teach you really well how to get into the game in a real way. And that has been super smart. Well, I'm gonna go duo lane. Did anybody go solo? I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna bum rush this lane and see what happens. So I'm playing Jinx right now, as my character. Andy, what would be tips for playing as Jinx? I went dual lane, so I'm going to be kind of helping and supporting, making sure that they don't get caught out there. But what are your thoughts about how to kind of play that character in that lane?
Yeah, for sure. So dual lane is definitely the right lane to go for most what we call marksmen in our game, right? And because as a role for the marksman, your job is actually to just stay alive and dish out as much damage as you possibly can, right? And a lot of that means you're staying back and you're farming the waves. You are gaining gold as quickly as you can. So when the late game comes around, you're able to really be that rock of damage for the team. Right, be able to be the cannon, the glass cannon, if you will.
Yeah.
So some tips and tricks here are so last hitting is something that is more kind of more prevalent on Wild Rift compared to some of our other competitors. It actually does matter, right? Though not as punishing as the PC version, where last hitting essentially landing the killing blow on the little minion there to gain the max amount of gold you possibly can. As you see there, so you just got 65 gold from killing that minion, but if you miss the last hit, for example, you'll get a reduced version of that. And so as the ADC, it's very important that, hey, you're monitoring these minions, making sure you're landing these killing blows so you can essentially ramp up as quickly as possible, because that's what's gonna help the team the most.
Absolutely.
If you are nice and strong, then the team can rely on you to dish out the damage.
Love it. Get him, coach. Oh, that was a good comment. Yeah, that was great. As the young kids say, that was a good gank. But again, my dual lane is like healing me perfectly. It's so good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the thing that like I didn't learn until I played MOBAs for the first time, was about last hitting and about trying to figure out, how to attack a lane, when to kind of farm your lane, all that kind of stuff. What are some of the things that, both in League and in general, people kind of don't understand yet? Like, what are some of the things that you think are kind of the initial early tips for people to understand of how to play not only their character correctly, but kind of the underlying foundations of what a MOBA is supposed to be?
Yeah, I think that's a super awesome question. If I had like the super short of it, I think is the first thing you want to learn is actually a game pace, right? Similar, let's say like okay, I'm using more basketball analogies here, but hey, right? Basketball, there's 4 quarters, right? And there's what happens in each of the quarter in basketball is kind of similar, but for a MOBA game, there's distinct phases of a game. Now, not every single game is going to be exactly the same, and the duration of these phases differ, but you can expect a lot of similarities each from game in and game out. So, for example, typically in the first, I would say, like 3 to 5 minutes of a MOBA game, you're experiencing something called the laning phase. Right, and so what you're doing here is you are really kind of it's you and your opponent, right? This is the I stare you down, you stare me down, see who gets the better of each other on the tactical executions. That's that phase of the game. And then as that transitions, what we call the mid game, here's where a lot of these the smaller scale skirmishes happen, right? So it might be like a 2v2, it might be a 3v3, and you're fighting over kind of smaller objectives, right? And some of these objectives will be like the buffs on the Rift, right? So we have things called blue buffs and red buffs that kind of power you up. So there could be fights there, or there could be fights over what we call dragons, right? So there's another objective on the map where it gives you some permanent buffs. You can expect that to happen in the middle parts of the game, right? And once you hit about like the 12, 11-minute mark of the game, this is what we call the late game phase, right? This is League of Legends, it's a game where there's a lot of fighting, right? And there's a lot of like I beat you, you beat me. But at the end of the day, to win the game of League of Legends, it's about pushing down the opponent's nexus,
Right.
right? And so if this was a combination of capture the flag and tag, you can tag people all day, but you're not going to win if you don't capture the flag.
Right.
And so you start to, at the end, figure out how am I going to push all the way up to the opponent's base and take over their base. And here, some of the core things you're going to find is we call like these large-scale team fights.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hey, there's like all 5 of you against the opponent's 5, right? Everybody's jumping in there, and these massive team fights happen, right? And there could be really like just bloodbath of 5v5. Oh, I ace your team, you ace my team, everybody dies, or nobody dies. Crazy things starts happening. You see that towards the end when you yourself has powered up, right, with your items, your levels, and the opponents have done the same, right?
Yeah.
So the fights are really explosive, is really kind of exciting. And so these are, I think, really distinct phases. And for new players, you should be aware of these phases, right? Hey, by like the 11, 12-minute mark, it's probably not a great idea for you to still be, right, like staying by yourself, killing off little minions off on the side.
Yeah.
You should probably look to have more team play, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if in the very beginning of the game, maybe you shouldn't try to do roam around all the time and not focus on gaining your economy and building up your engine.
Right. I remember, early times when I was learning how to play, and remembering, well, now you should be farming. Like, you should definitely be farming at this point. You should be trying to figure out good ways to, build your economy. Make sure you carry some wards in your kit, which is a thing that people are just like, what's a ward? I'm like, it's a thing that will keep your butt alive. So basically it's a device basically, or something you have within your kit that will let you get vision on other parts of the team when they might be able to roll over and try to kill you. So it's been, me learning all those small things of, maybe you hit your back minions before you hit the front minions, because those are the ones that do a lot of damage. All that kind of stuff has been really interesting to be able to learn and to figure out how that stuff actually works in the game in a real way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's always been fun. And, stuff like mana management and all that kind of stuff is always smart, and learning all those things too. So, yeah, it's super, super cool. What are some of your favorite characters to play?
Yeah, so on the PC game, my favorite characters, I'm a marksman or ADC player by nature. I guess for the last 10 years, because my friends were tired of last hitting, and I had the farming job. I get to play farming simulator, but on Wild Rift, it's actually been super different. I found myself not kind of gravitating to the role I had on PC. I actually enjoyed jungling a lot more on Wild Rift, and especially playing with some of the assassins. I'm super envious of people who are able to play the assassin, or the character who can go in, right, focus on a high priority target, get them out of the game, and then get out, right, get out in time. That's the whole like the assassin gameplay.
Yeah.
And that Wild Rift has just been speaking to me a lot more. It's a little bit hard for me to say, but characters be like a Kahlief or Zed, for example.
Yeah.
On PC side, a trouble I always find is I don't know where I am. I lose myself in the PC gameplay, but on Wild Rift, I just find because your camera is always centered, right? Your movement translates directly to your main character, so you always know exactly where you're going to be moving. And so playing these like super mobile and kind of like dancing in and out characters, I've been finding that really fun on Wild Rift, and I'm enjoying my time with them.
That's awesome. I love that. And yeah, I'm as a person who's been trying to, learn which characters I like a lot, and I'm definitely gonna get wrecked. Ugh. I should have blinked out. Is trying to figure out which characters are gonna play towards that style. You mentioned jungling. For folks who don't play and are new to the MOBA space, what's the jungle role for folks at home?
Yeah, awesome. So the jungler. So I mentioned before there was like 3 phases of the game, right? There's the early game, the mid game, and the late game. The junglers are the ones that in the early and mid games are really there to facilitate change and kind of instill a sense of unknown in the game, right? Because otherwise, for the other 4 players, you see your opponent, you kind of know where they are. You're again staring each other down in the face. But for the junglers, you're as the jungler name goes, right? You're not fighting the person in the beginning. You're fighting creatures and monsters on the map for you to level up and gain power. The key part about that is nobody knows where you are. Right, the opponent team doesn't know where you are headed, and so a lot of times is how do you hide your position? How do you come out and surprise your friends or your enemies, right? And making sure that they're unprepared and you're able to gain advantage for your team that way. That's kind of in a nutshell what the jungling is all about. Is it's a very cerebral role, right? Not only do you have to plan your own paths and route of gaining economy, because if you're just like the other 4 players, right? The minions come to you essentially, right? You can just stay there and they come to you and you fight them off and you gain money that way. But for a jungler, you have to plan your own route. You have to figure out, hey, where am I going to gain my resources? And at the same time, where am I going to pick and choose to help out my team? And at the same time, there's somebody who's thinking the exact same thing on the other side. And so this is really that kind of that hidden information gameplay. That's why a lot of people enjoy jungling.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, it's always one of those things where, me as a person who likes to try to figure out, likes to try to figure out the best ways that I can be helpful to my team. I used to like to jungle a bunch because I always felt like I could, you wind up kind of playing a little bit solo for most of your time that you're in the jungle. So you can kind of learn and figure out where you want to, do the most damage or, pick your shots or understand where you're going to be most effective in. I shouldn't have did that. But it is also one of those things of just like, then you get a chance to really learn a lot about, how you can both learn the map, which I think is really important for junglers too, because you have a lot of map awareness. You have to learn routes really quickly. You have to remember, which ways to get from one place. And also you have to remember timing a lot because you have to remember when buffs come back up. You have to remember all that kind of stuff in a way that, takes a lot of time to learn, the way that all of that winds up working. So junglers often are some of the smartest players in MOBA, in the MOBA space, because they are constantly thinking about all parts of the map, not only your jungle, but when people are going to invade and when you can kind of get to spaces and know when things are going to kind of pop back up on the map, dragon and everything, and blue buff, red buff, that kind of stuff. So it's super cool to be able to see that be a thing. And I also love the fact that you talked about, sometimes being able to surprise, the other players and things like that. One of the things you don't want to do as a jungler is surprise your friends. Because that means you're running around in places you shouldn't be. And you're like, well, how the hell did you die over there? What are you doing over there, buddy? You're like, you're not supposed to be over there at all. So that stuff is always fun to see happen. You're like, what are you doing over there?
Yeah, for sure. I think like a lot of the success or failure of a jungler in your role, you're dependent on collaborating with your team.
Yeah.
Okay? It's definitely it should never be up just to the jungler. The team needs to stand behind their jungler to be successful, for sure.
I've gotten into so many fights with friends when we were playing stuff and being like, well, dude, where were you? I was like, I was over there farming. It was like, what? Oh, I didn't know you were farming. You should tell me you're still farming. You see pings on the map all the time of like, help. So that stuff is always great to be able to see. When you're thinking about, again, upcoming characters or, the way you're looking at the kind of next phase of what you want Wild Rift to be, of course, without sharing any new secrets about stuff, what are some of the things you're most excited about for the upcoming, updates and things like that? What are some of the things you're really excited about?
Awesome. So I think initially part of our kind of what we want to do for players with Wild Rift initially is, hey, get a lot of that familiarity, the authenticity. Players say, hey, like this is I never expected League of Legends gameplay on a phone. Right? To capture a lot of that value, and eventually looking forward, right, we are, as players get themselves more familiar with their game, can really understand, hey, like this is no joke, right? Like, you can absolutely get the League of Legends experience on mobile.
Yeah.
Our next step is absolutely to start looking at where does it make sense to innovate, right? Where does it make sense to kind of have people work a little bit outside of their comfort zones and be more in tune with this is the mobile game, but there's things that we can do on the with the mobile side or eventually on the console side, right? There's twin stick controls. Where can we find new ways for players to play and innovate? I think that's one side I'm super excited about. And the other side is like there's other systems that we can be built into. So for example, the current event we have going on right now, the Masters of the Hunt between Rengar and Kha'Zix, we were able to build in a familiar system from PC League of Legends, but updated on our side, which is the Nemesis duel system. Right? Where, hey, if you have these two heated rivals in the League of Legends lore, how do we build in a sense of that in the game? Right? How do you feel really like you are at each other's throats, and this is a heated rivalry that you're gonna have, and so building these kind of new, fresh ways that people didn't expect to have and to engage with the game. These are things that are really exciting for me. Like, hey, like this is a delighter, right? People didn't even expect this, and now when I see a Nemesis duel pop up, what is this? What benefits do I get from this? It's like, wow, wait, if I'm Rengar and I get this benefit, I build up energy as I'm in my ultimate form. That's amazing. That's crazy. So these kind of surprises, I'm super eager to bring to players.
Well, seriously, and I want to say this from the bottom of my heart, that was super fun. Like, I know we were playing bots. I know and mind you, this tells you how good we both are, because we had a full interview while playing, and it was fantastic. It was super, super cool. Again, I'm really excited to see where the game is going to go. I'm dying for, at some point, something like this to come to console. I've been waiting for a console MOBA to get into for a long time. League seems like it's perfect to be able to do that work. Again, so many characters, so many champions, so much lore, so many battles to fight in between those in between those lanes that we've seen over the years kind of get even better. Really excited for what you're all putting out in the world. I think it's really, really good. I think a game like this is hard to do, especially on a mobile device. And I feel like you've nailed it so far in terms of the way players move, screen real estate, the UI that you put into it feels intuitive and it doesn't feel like it's clunky or cluttered. And it always feels like I can do exactly what I'm trying to do in a way that doesn't feel like I'm struggling to feel like this isn't the experience that I had a feeling it was going to be, but it feels like the experience that I want for this device to be able to put. So, when you get a chance to go talk back to the team, please give them my love. I think they've done a fantastic job here of making this game as cool as it possibly can on this device in this way. So thank you and the team for making that happen.
Absolutely. No, thank you for those words, Kahlief. And I think just like all of our other Riot games, look out for us to get better. Right, we treat this as we were never in it for like, hey, this is a flash in the pan. We are here for the long run, and we are continuously going to be investing and making sure that the experience that players have evolve, and we grow with the players, and are always looking for new ways and ways to innovate, improve the experience that players are currently having.
Fantastic, man. And I'm gonna have to bug you now to see if we can play both here and on PC so I can learn. You can teach me how to not be a scrub. so again, thank you so much for the time. It has been a blast getting a chance to play with you. Would love to do it again, and would love to do more cool stuff with you over at Riot, because I think you're all doing some brilliant stuff in the space. I think it's been really fun to be able to do it. So thank you again for spending the time and hanging out with me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Everybody in Brookago, this is fun. We want to do more stuff like this with awesome devs and awesome games. So, if you like this kind of content, please let us know. I think, play alongs is something that I've always wanted to do. And it feels like now that I have the equipment and it all works right, I can finally do it. It's absolutely great. So we'll see you all very, very soon. Much love to you all in Brookago. Go check out Wild Rift. It's fantastic. It's super, super cool. So we'll see you very, very soon. Much love and peace.